Hello and good afternoon. My name is Zach Mentz, Senior Editor for Cannabis Business Times, and welcome to today's webinar, Making the Connection Between Risk Management and Profitability, a guide for cannabis operators. Hosted by Cannabis Business Times in partnership with Hub International, today's webinar will feature Hub International's panel of experts as they assess current trends in the cannabis industry and how those trends might impact your company's risk profile. I'd now like to introduce Jay Verdi, Chief Sales Officer for Hub's Cannabis Specialty Practice. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you, Zach, and thank you for having me. Hello, and welcome to our educational webinar, Making the Connection Between Risk Management and Profitability, a guide for cannabis operators. Again, this webinar is being brought to you by Hub International Limited in partnership with Cannabis Business Times. CBT's mission is to help accelerate the success of the legal cannabis market by providing expert advice on cultivation, marketing, financial topics, legal issues, and much, much more. Without putting everyone to sleep, our mission is to bring to the surface a very important topic that usually is kicked down the list of priorities in our fast-paced evolving industry. Today, we will be making the connection between risk management and profitability. Are we pumped up? Are we ready to rock? Okay, let's go. Again, I'm your host and moderator, Jay Verdi, Chief Sales Officer for North America of Hub International's industry-leading cannabis specialty practice group. We take great pride in being innovative thought leaders and advocates for a truly underserved industry. Believe me when I tell you, being in the insurance industry for 18 plus years, I've heard every single excuse and objection that exists of not wanting to participate and support a segment like cannabis. It's an uphill battle that I have been on and will continue to be on and fight for until the cannabis industry is treated like any other legitimate industry. Joining us and leading the conversation are an esteemed and decorated group of experts from Hub International who have been pioneers for the cannabis industry when it comes to risk management, employee benefits, and insurance solutions. I'm humbled and privileged to introduce you to our Hub Cannabis Specialty experts. Tim, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Jay. I'm excited to be here with everybody today. My name's Tim Skimmelhorn. I am an employee benefits consultant with 15 plus years experience in the middle market space. I live in Denver, Colorado, and I've been working with cannabis employers since 2016. I also lead Hub's National Cannabis Captive program, and I'm responsible for the growth and performance of that program for all of our clients. Like I said, I'm happy to be here with everybody today as we walk through captives as a risk management strategy for employee benefits programs in cannabis employers.
Thanks, Tim. And Win, if you will.
Thanks, Jay, and hello, everyone. My name is Win Williams, and I am a Senior Vice President for Hub International Risk Services Division, and I lead the Hub Risk Services Cannabis Specialty Practice. I've got approximately 30 years of experience in the environmental health and safety field, and I am based in Los Angeles, and like Tim, I've been working closely with our cannabis clients since about 2016.
Great. Thank you, Win. Thanks for being here. And Kyle, how about you?
Thanks, Jay, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kyle Judge, a 9-year veteran in the management liability space, specializing in directors and officers insurance out of Hub's Chicago office. For the last 3 years, I've been focusing on the cannabis sector, helping my clients secure sound and comprehensive coverage in a very limited marketplace. I very much look forward to our discussion today.
Awesome. That's great. And in all fairness, risk management and insurance is not the most exciting topic and is a little boring and painstaking to take on, but it is vital to the health of your business and your cannabis operations in order to really be successful. Making the connection between risk management and profitability will spotlight current and emerging trends, the top overlooked risks, the importance of developing a comprehensive risk management plan, and the essential insurance coverages to keep your business protected, not just compliant, but protected as you grow. It is of the utmost importance to have a proactive risk management approach in order to help mitigate any sort of risk or potential loss. It's all about the 3 Ps. It's about protecting your people, your property, and your profitability. Let's start by speaking about your most important asset, and that's your people. It's extremely important to keep your people safe and provide an environment for them where they are continuing to operate safely, protecting themselves and others. There are biological and chemical hazards in any sophisticated grow or processing operation. Use of protective gear and proper storage of hazardous materials should be woven into the foundation of any standard operating procedure. Working with high pressure CO2 and ethanol and any other sort of extraction process should be implemented with the highest of due diligence and ample training to prevent any sort of mishaps. It is in the best interest to always keep your employees feeling safe from any workplace violence and paying close attention to things like ergonomics. That'll prevent any long-term disability claims. When we recently facilitated an educational seminar about the importance of protecting your employees, what are some of the most important things to consider?
Yeah, Jay, you're exactly right. And the list of things that you just spoke about are exactly what employers need to be focusing on. Historically, the focus for many cannabis clients or companies have been to meeting licensing requirements, attracting investors, and growing their business. But what we're seeing now, as the cannabis industry has matured, we're seeing cannabis companies put a greater emphasis on employee safety. So they're establishing formal safety policies, they're developing written standard operating procedures, they're training they're providing safety training for their employees, et cetera. And this is excellent. Safer organizations are typically more efficient, more profitable, and employee morale and retention are higher.
So attracting and retaining the right people and talented individuals is harder than ever. And we're in the age, as they call it, the age of the great resignation. So Tim, does the cannabis industry in particular encounter the same kind of struggles here?
That's what we're seeing, Jay. Retention is it's certainly a big issue. These companies are growing at a substantial rate. They need to be able to retain those employees to keep up with operations. Many are focusing on total compensation and personalized employee benefits package as an investment to minimize these impacts. The challenge is cannabis industry has historically encountered limited carriers and partner options that they could offer to their employees as part of their benefits package. This has made it really difficult for employers to offer basic coverage options to their people. Things like dental insurance, disability insurance. The traditional carriers still have limitations and restrictions for cannabis. So groups are looking for creative ways that they can offer more and improve the employee experience. Some of these strategies involve, like we mentioned earlier, a captive solution.
So maximize what you're paying for to offer your employees more and get the most yield out of your premium spent. There are flexible options, and as we're talking about here, don't settle for just what's available or the cookie cutter option. Opt in for an employee benefits program that is as unique as our industry and robust enough for the talent that drives your revenue. Now, Tim, you mentioned captive a few times, and for those that don't know what that is, can you elaborate a little further?
Sure. Captives are an alternative funding option and a risk management strategy that is designed as a replacement to the traditional carrier models. Captives are created when a group of employers pool together and create economies of scale to purchase reinsurance coverage at a much cheaper premium. In addition to cheaper premiums, captive members can access enhanced coverage options to include in their benefits packages for employees. This is something that we've seen firsthand based on the popularity of Hub's private Cannabis Captive. Members of the Cannabis Captive have access to these enhanced features, and we're really seeing a profound impact with our clients' ability to attract and retain talent as a result. Captives are owned by the insured, and they're designed to give members better control over their claims and fixed costs by spreading the risk of those claims. They also provide members the financial freedom to explore self-funding while having the protection of the captive and the other members behind them. In all, captives are structured so members are responsible for their own smaller routine claims. Each pays into the captive layer, and that captive layer helps cover the medium-sized claims. And these members, they actually share in the losses or profits after annual payouts. So captive is a unique alternative to the traditional carrier model.
So I know that you touched on a little bit of the benefits of being part of a captive. So can you further dive into the value of being in such captive versus the traditional risk insurance transfer?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the key features of a captive is renewal stability. You know, employers are receiving double-digit renewal increases on their health insurance year after year with the traditional carrier. So a captive offers them a more sustainable renewal trajectory in comparison. As a matter of fact, we tracked the experience over 2 years of 34 Hub international middle market clients in leading captive programs. These clients spanned a variety of industries and were located in different geographies across the US, and the outcome was pretty incredible. These members saw a healthcare cost increase of just 2.7% in 2019, and 32% of these members actually saw costs decline. You know, something else is captives also incorporate different cost controls to minimize the impact of high cost claims. This helps the performance of the program for all of the captive members. And, you know, at the end of the year, a high performing program returns greater amounts for these members. So, you know, one of the popular cost control examples we always focus on is specialty prescription claims, since those have, you know, a pretty tremendous impact on total costs. So there's the renewal stability, and then captives also offer greater flexibility. And, you know, this kind of goes back to the traditional carriers and plan options tend to fall short of providing a level of coverage that many cannabis industry employees need or find value in. And captives offer a greater flexible and a lot of freedom to customize the benefits that we're offering to the employees. So members can literally choose their plan design, their network, and vendor partners. A great example would be the work we are doing with members in the Hub's Cannabis Captive, as I mentioned earlier. Members of this program can personalize benefits they offer to employees. It can include enhancements specific to their population and age demographic, which is really unique. A few examples of these types of enhancements are LASIK surgery, cochlear implants, hearing aids, testing services, coverage for bariatric surgery, virtual primary care and specialty care options, outlets for stem cell alternatives to orthopedic surgery. These are some of the things that we can now include in benefit programs for our clients rather than them being excluded from traditional insurance. And it's making a big impact.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, very exciting and innovative stuff. And it's all about kind of flexibility, right? And Tim, you mentioned our friends and clients in the cannabis industry. Now, can any cannabis related operator take advantage of being part of a captive or said captive?
Sure. So the Cannabis Captive is exclusive to Hub and Hub's clients. It is a private captive exclusively designed for the cannabis, hemp, CBD, and those in the ancillary space within this industry. This demographic of employees are viewed as a favorable risk in the eyes of the underwriter. And today, the Cannabis Captive members include a broad range of employers from locally owned dispensary chains to vertically integrated, publicly traded operations, MSOs, and ancillary vendors within the same risk demographic.
So Tim, if you don't mind me asking a quick question, it seems like this is a pretty unique solution for a lot of our clients. What kind of savings, if any, are we talking about when we talk about this captive solution?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kyle. You know, we have a recent case study outlining the impact of this program and the impact it had for one of our ancillary members. This client was faced with extremely high specialty prescription claims that were catastrophic to the performance of their program and their renewal options prior to joining the Cannabis Captive. The Cannabis Captive was able to actually reduce their specialty prescription claims from $200,000 a year down to $5,000 a year, and an additional $214,000 a year in reinsurance premium was saved by joining the captive as well. And that goes on top of an additional $62,000 a year in fixed costs. So in short, all of this adds up to a pretty incredible amount in most scenarios for our clients. And these are incredible results that we're seeing in just about, every scenario in different markets throughout the US.
Thanks, Tim. And, now that we've really addressed and taken care of our people, let's chat a little bit about protecting your property. Again, it starts with the safety of your facility, equipment, and operations, right? I mean, production hazards with extraction, greenhouse combustible materials, and improper lights used are, some of the current top issues with fire and safety that is causing damage and really responsible for losses in the industry. So that what we're seeing, right? These things do happen and sometimes unavoidable. So the importance of having updated sprinklers to make sure that they're working and things like emergency hazard protocols would be the ideal defense to help mitigate any further damage if and when an incident kind of does occur, right? All these actions that are taken will also make your operations more attractive to any sort of insurance program so that you can benefit from some premium relief as, you prove to be less of a risk in the eyes of the decision makers at the insurance companies, the underwriters. And we'll dive into that a little bit more later on too. So Win, as the leader for our cannabis risk services in the US, can you please emphasize the importance of protecting your building and your property?
Yeah, for sure, Jay. And you actually spelled out several of those in your comments. But the property insurance market continues to be very, very challenging. Insurance carriers are laser focused on fire protection systems and housekeeping at the cannabis operations, but they've also been focusing on the extraction process, the extraction process that use volatile organic compounds. So cannabis companies need to make sure that their fire protection systems are in good working order and inspected regularly. They also need to make sure that the electrical systems in their extraction process rooms are adequately protected according to the appropriate standards. I live in California, so wildfire is obviously a big concern out here in some areas. So having an established emergency action plan is very important. One emerging area of concern is lighting. High intensity discharge lighting, or HID lighting, is very commonly used in grow houses. The concern with this type of lighting is that if a bulb fails, and an HID bulb fails, it could shower sparks, flame onto the product below, causing a fire. At a minimum, even if it doesn't cause a fire, it can cause a lot of smoke, which could affect all the plants in that room. Alternatively, LED is generally considered safer and more efficient than HID lighting. And in fact, the state of California is considering cannabis growers to require LED lighting in their cannabis operations.
Yeah, great point. And it's definitely something that is coming up a lot more when our underwriters are asking for supplementals, what type of equipment is being used and what type of lighting is used in the building. So, I mean, big picture Win, property can mean a lot of things, right? So what are some of the other property protections and considerations that, need to be in place for our friends and clients in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, well, you can probably lump property into four big buckets. So we talked about protecting buildings already, so that's a big property, a big consideration. We've already discussed that. Secondly, how are we protecting the cannabis product itself? And then the third and fourth might not be completely obvious and are somewhat overlooked, but how are we protecting our fleet and our vehicles? And lastly, how are we protecting our data and our cyber infrastructure?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like cannabis companies do a pretty good job of protecting their products. All the folks we've met show tremendous passion, heart for the business. Would you agree to that statement as far as the level of protection you're seeing?
Oh, for sure. Overall, yes. I would say that cannabis companies do an excellent job of protecting their products. Physical security is pretty good. Typically, they have restricted access to the buildings, have tons of cameras, guards, strict procedures for admitting employees and visitors into their property. That said, the potential for theft and burglary of the product, particularly by current or former employers, continues to be a concern for cannabis companies. So they need to remain vigilant.
So yes, I mean, protecting your property also includes protecting your product, right? So things like mold, residual solvents, and contamination can harm the very product that you're trying to sell. Having worked so hard in trying to get a quality flower or gummy or beverage or vape to the market, the last thing any of us want is a product recall due to something very dangerous or hazardous, or even due to a mislabeling issue. Can't even begin to tell you how much brand damage an incident like this can cause and negatively impact sales and revenue for your organization. Take care of your product. It's your baby, right, Win?
Yeah, absolutely. Product recalls due to molds, yeast, aspergillus, VOCs, et cetera, they continue to happen fairly frequently. And you're right, your product is your baby, it's your brand. So establishing protocols to prevent employees from tracking mold into the grow facilities and production facilities is important. And maintaining an environment within the grow houses and production facilities that checks mold growth are critical. Testing labs are on the hot seat these days. There's been a lot in the news regarding testing labs. So ensuring that the lab that you're contracting with, you want to make sure that they're reputable and they have good quality control programs. In fact, several states in the United States are looking at implementing and standardizing testing requirements.
Yeah. That's amazing what we're talking about here. And, just to dive into it a little bit further, the concern of protecting a fleet of vehicles for delivery of a product comes up quite a bit in conversations now with our friends and clients throughout the industry. So how can companies better protect their vehicles from any potential loss?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that cannabis companies are focusing in a lot more on these days. So there's many ways to protect your fleet of vehicles. A lot of state cannabis regulations require GPS or telematic systems in the vehicles, and these are a very powerful tool to help monitor the safety of your drivers, for one, by providing a supervisor or someone at your headquarters with real-time alerts on unsafe driving behaviors. So you can directly address drivers who are driving unsafely. These telematic systems or GPS systems, they're also great for gaining routing efficiencies. So that'll cool. And God forbid if the vehicle is stolen, they can help with the recovery of the vehicle. So many times these systems, these telematics and GPS systems will pay for themselves. So it's a good investment. Another way to help protect your fleet is to carefully screen your drivers before you hire them. You don't want to hire hiring drivers right now is extremely difficult, but you don't want to hire your problems. So it's important that you pull the prospective drivers' motor vehicle records to check to make sure that they don't have any red flags on theirs. So you'll want to make sure that their driver's license is valid and it hasn't been suspended. And the NPRs will show red flags such as DUIs, multiple at-fault accidents, excessive speeding, violations, etc. So it's critical to pull MVRs for new employees, which I think that's happening fairly regularly. But you should consider pulling MVRs on your existing employees on a fairly regular basis. at a minimum once a year.
Yeah, and look, when you're hiring people, it's a good point to do that, right? Because any commercial fleet auto policy that we put together, we're pulling MVR records based on what the insurance company requires anyway. So it's just a good due diligence to qualify the driver, and then you'll have those reports ready to submit to your insurance company and underwriter as well. Now, when certainly cyber attacks have been in the news a lot more as of late. So, do you really think that cannabis companies need to worry about cyber attacks or threats?
100%, and you're absolutely right. The pandemic has ushered in a new era of hacking, but it's also ushered in a new era of cybersecurity as well. So there's certainly a risk of bad actors getting into your systems and either freezing up your IT platforms and or stealing your data for ransom. So cannabis companies need to take a long, hard look at how their IT platform and data are protected and how their employees are being trained on recognizing threats or bad actors. Phishing exercises where outside actors try to gain access into your spaces is quite it's happening quite frequently. So employees need to be trained on recognizing these attempts. There's an excellent article in the July 2022 Cannabis Business Times called "How Cannabis Companies Can Prepare Now to Prevent Cyber Attacks." So the Cannabis Business Times brought together a panel of experts similar to this to discuss specific actions that cannabis companies can take to protect their overall cyber infrastructure.
Yeah, awesome stuff. And there are insurance policies for that too as well, for any kind of extra protection that you want in case of a breach or an attack and ransomware. And we can talk about that a little bit more later on. But honestly, just as Win had mentioned, we're mentioning a lot of things here, and just being compliant for licensing, it's not enough anymore. Just ticking a box is not enough anymore. And I'm sorry, but we all know how much we have to go through in order to get a license, operate the cannabis business, and then maintain that license as well. So, when is enough, right? We need a safety management system that is proactive. We want a system that reviews data and actively goes to find potential hazards before there is any type of incident. We want proactive inspections monthly. We want safety analysis, and we want facility inspections and audits that we can run on our own, so we can see how we are doing ourselves. And if anything, God forbid, does happen, we want the ability to complete a root cause analysis so we learn and can prevent it from happening again. Training and accountability, protecting your property. So what would be some of the first kind of basic steps or few things that people can take action on and assure that the necessary steps are taken for safety and risk management? And I know that's a loaded question, but any kind of help you can advise on our audience would be great here.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a whole topic for a whole nother webinar. But yeah, I mean, it all starts with an assessment of what your organization is, what risk management concerns does the organization have, and what controls does the organization have. So from there, you'll have a good idea of what your exposures are. You'll have an idea of what those controls are, and then you can start putting these controls in place. If you're a new organization, I'd start laying the foundation for an effective cannabis safety management system now. This would include developing a formal injury and illness prevention program, frequently programmed hazard assessments, establishing written safety policies and SOPs, and training your employees, as you mentioned earlier. This is a lot easier to do up front. Unfortunately, a lot of cannabis companies have grown exponentially over the past few years, and it's a little hard to implement these proactive safety measures once the company has grown so much. But it can be done, and it should be done. But it all starts with a hazard assessment to determine what your risks are and evaluate what those controls are.
Thank you so much, Win. And, lastly, it all boils down to protecting your profitability, protecting your balance sheet. In the event of a total loss or catastrophe, what is the business continuity plan? What is your organization's resiliency? Each license is site specific. How are we going to make or replace that revenue? I don't mean to scare anyone, but these are things that we need to be thinking about as we move like the speed of light and exponentially grow. Mature markets have litigation, full stop. And we did not see a ton of litigation early in the green rush. It was too new. Regulations were moving all around and potential for litigation was continually being assessed. Well, it's here. We're seeing massive uptakes in litigation on both sides of the border with cannabis fires and grow facilities with underinsured buildings, leading to shareholder actions. Regulatory enforcement and fines and penalties are now stacking up. Essential risk management insurance coverages are crucial to keep your business and your profitability protected as the industry continues to evolve. Kyle, as Hub's executive lines cannabis expert, what is your opinion on the current state of the market?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I think this is a very important topic for all of our clients, that are dealing with cannabis, is kind of knowing where the market is at. And the number one issue most of our clients are going to face is the fact that the cannabis industry has a very limited marketplace. We have a very high demand and very low supply of carriers that are actually providing any kind of meaningful coverage in this space. And a lot of times this is leading to higher premiums, higher retentions that our clients must, bear before the defense costs are being paid. And then the coverage is being significantly scaled back when compared to a non-cannabis client of similar size. We're missing a lot of key enhancements that we see in the middle market space as well. So overall sticker shock over the high pricing and high retentions has routinely prevented a lot of new time buyers from purchasing appropriate coverage and protections. And a lot of this could be attributed to the fact that it's federally illegal in the U.S. And cannabis laws are varying from state to state, which has led to a lot of our underwriters being unable to or unwilling to provide comprehensive coverage for directors and officers. A lot of times too, we see reinsurance treaties being a major sticking point when we're trying to push for broader terms and conditions or push for higher limits. That reinsurance has really handicapped a lot of the carriers that are stepping into the space from being able to do more. So it's a very slow process to try to get more comprehensive coverage and better protections in place for the directors and officers. The other things that we kind of from an overall market standpoint that we run into is a lack of experience. Now, outside of a few select carriers that are very specialized in the space, a lot of our underwriters are traditional middle market director and officer underwriters that are taking a step back and trying to work within the cannabis space. And part of the problem is we have very little historic perspective and knowledge on claims that are arising. You touched on it earlier, Jay. And a lot of this leads to hesitancy from our underwriters and their management teams, which again kind of contributes to the higher pricing, the more restrictive coverage. We don't have that historical 20, 25 years worth of D&O claims that we do on the private non-cannabis side of the house. And then lastly, just to touch on it briefly, there's an occasional stigma around the industry and organizations that are operating in this space from a few, from underwriters. And in my experience, these are extremely false because we've routinely worked with passionate leadership teams, passionate, very experienced C-suite individuals who are running organizations. But needless to say, in certain circles of the industry, there is this stigma that we need to overcome during the underwriting process.
Yeah, well said. I mean, a couple of comments there, and don't get me started on treaty exclusions and reinsurers. It makes my blood boil. But big shout outs to specialty niche carriers like SafeHerb and CanGen and QuadScore and CanAssure for truly making efforts to provide solutions for our friends and clients in the cannabis industry. With that said, it is still very much a specialty niche market with limited capacity, which is really unsettling for me. I mean, what other industry is under this type of microscope and scrutiny for development and stringent standards for licensing in order to operate. Reputational risk? I mean, what about big pharma or guns and ammunition or big tobacco? How about liquor and the adult entertainment industry? I mean, I can go on and on. We will continue to fight the good fight and advocate for our industry when it comes to obtaining insurance, the proper insurance coverage in order to protect our operations. Proper coverage, buyer beware, right? Imagine paying hefty premiums on an insurance policy just to find out that there's no coverage for any cannabis and your claim is denied. How can we live in a world where you purchase insurance for your cannabis operations and cannabis is actually excluded in the wordings? How? But believe me, it happens and we've seen it. So you have to know what you're covered for. Kyle, can you walk us through some of the things that you've seen and what's involved when trying to procure the best and most robust coverage that is available?
Yeah, Jay, and I think you hit on some very good points there, right? The first step into ensuring that you have any claim covered is to have the most broadest and most robust coverage in place at the beginning. And the first step really is to review the cannabis language or any cannabis exclusions that are going to be added to the policy. Now, almost every carrier that's operating in this space is going to have some form of exclusionary language or endorsement that goes on the policy that is going to further define the cannabis operations and potentially any exclusions or exclude certain portions of those operations. And this wording varies wildly between carriers. Some, Jay, as you mentioned, some could be extremely detrimental where they are borderline excluding the cannabis operations, while others are extremely broad and are simply clarifying that coverage is only taking place or would only be provided in a state where cannabis is legal, right? Kind of circumventing that federal illegal issue that we talked about earlier. On top of the cannabis language, we really have to take a look at the standard directors and officers exclusions that are built into every D&O policy. When we're dealing with a cannabis client, these exclusions really can take on another meaning, right? If you have a regulatory exclusion on there or illegal acts or conduct exclusion built into the policy, if these are not specifically tailored for the cannabis industry, it can have detrimental effects on the ability for that policy to react during a claim. So a lot of extra care needs to go into reviewing the entire form, right? Not just the endorsements that are thrown on there, but the base policy form to ensure that coverage is not being adversely affected. On top of the frontline review that we just talked about, it's a very complex underwriting process. Unlike your middle market non-cannabis directors and officers, coverage, we can't really just throw together an application and financials and send it off to the underwriters hoping for the best. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, a lot of our best results are going to be derived from a well-organized presentation of the risk and getting that out to the underwriters because we have a very limited market. We want to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward, showing the risk in the best light. Every bit of edge and expertise that we can show in this marketplace is really going to drive a meaningful results for the program and help further protect not only the company's balance sheet, but the personal assets of the directors and officers. And then lastly, ultimately at the end of the day, you're purchasing this coverage to pay for claims. Now we hope you never have one, but on the off chance that there is a claim, you want to make sure that the policy is in a form or in a complete form that is able to pay for any of those claims and allegations that pop up. And having a strong team, not only with your broker partners, but also with an insurance carrier that you've partnered with, will really help mitigate those issues down the line as claims arise.
So remember the 3 Ps, right? We're talking about protect your people, your product, and your profitability. No one understands your business better than you. Clearly articulate it. Assess your leadership's risk tolerance level, and it can vary, and everyone is on a different journey on their cannabis adventure. Know what suits you best, and really know you're not alone.
That last update kind of brings up some questions that we've been hearing. So Kyle, we hear a lot from our clients and within the community about D&O premiums. And sometimes, historically, maybe that has tripled or doubled, at the time of renewal. Is that still such an expensive line item for these companies to protect against is that D&O?
Yeah, Tim, I think that's a fair point. And as I mentioned earlier, sticker shock historically has been one of the biggest hurdles for new clients coming in trying to protect their organization with D&O insurance. And again, historically, that might have been true. I think over the past 12 months, we've had a ton of new entrants step into the space, providing that additional supply. And with that additional supply of D&O coverage, we are starting to see a decrease in premiums. We're seeing retention starting to creep down into what you would say probably more affordable or more comparable areas to non-cannabis industry. And with that, we're also seeing that pricing and coverage starting to broaden a little bit, right? We have more carriers that are offering newer enhancements onto the program. So historically, I would say that's true, but I think the winds are pushing in a more favorable direction for our clients, where they're going to start to see more affordable premiums, more affordable retentions, and broader coverage and terms and conditions throughout their program.
Absolutely. Kyle, that's amazing. And I mean, I remember when we kind of first all started this, there was only about, two options, or maybe even one, and maybe even a half. But now you are seeing some flexibility and some more entrance to the market. So, kudos to building that reputation out and knowing, really what's going on there and staying on top of this quickly moving industry. And, as we talked about everything today, it's so vital and important to partner with the experts. I mean, cannabis and insurance, two industries that couldn't be any more different, right? One is like lightning and the other one is, well, it's essentially molasses, right? Maybe the rabbit and the turtle, or, the great Usain Bolt versus, well, I don't know, anyone, right? I mean, you get it, right? We aren't going to wait, nor do we have the luxury to. This industry, this truly underserved industry, deserves better. There are alternatives out there to the traditional risk insurance transfer. Let's be smart about it. Let's collaborate and let's work together. I can't stress this enough. Whether you're a large cultivator, a processing facility, an extractor, a small craft grower, a bud tender, a driver, when it comes to risk management and insurance, it is absolutely vital that you partner with the experts. Any final comments as we kind of wrap up the presentation and this webinar today from our experts? Tim, any final thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I think unfortunately we're just still at a place in the world of employee benefits where, cannabis employers are waiting for the traditional insurance companies to catch up to their needs. And until that time happens, I'm glad that we could at least spend some time today talking about captives as a relevant alternative to those traditional options, because we're seeing a lot of phenomenal just results with the things that they're able to accomplish and the money that they're able to save. So great to spend some time with everybody today talking through those types of risk management strategies.
Great. Win, Kyle, anything to wrap up?
Yeah, I've got one quick comment, Jay. So, we presented a lot of information over the past hour or so. I think a real good takeaway from this seminar would be to do a high-level risk assessment of your enterprise to see how you're protecting your people, your property, your profitability, and what those risks are. And if you identify any gaps, then you can put together a roadmap to help close those gaps.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. I just want to again add, optimism, I think is what a big takeaway is for the industry. As Jay mentioned, the traditional insurance marketplace is pretty slow moving, but we are seeing some very exciting changes, especially on the directors and officers side. And I think now is a perfect time to reevaluate your exposures and your tolerance and take a look at directors and officers insurance to further protect, the company's plan or the company's assets.
Yeah, well said. It's definitely very challenging, but that's what makes our jobs really fun, right? I mean, and I share your sentiment. I'm glass all the way full of optimism when it comes to the flourishing cannabis industry. So my name is Jay Verdi. We represent Hub International's industry-leading cannabis specialty practice group, and I guess that's our time for today. To our panel of experts, thank you for leading, and to our viewers, thank you for joining us. For any other information, you can always contact us at hubinternational.com/cannabis or email us at cannabis@hubinternational.com. Let us do the worrying so you can focus on growing. And Zach, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to take a few while we have everyone here today.
Yeah, Jay, we certainly have questions. And before we get to those, I want to thank you, Kyle, Win, and Tim again for your time today. As Win said, we covered a lot here. We could probably go a lot more. I'd like to go back, starting with one of our questions, go back to something Kyle mentioned earlier. And one of the challenges of this industry is the lack of federal legalization and a lot of patchwork from state to state. One question we have from the audience is, are there any potential federal regulatory changes coming soon? And how might that impact risk management in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, we keep track of federal and state changes all the time, but I think the greatest impact that you're going to see is an increase in supply, right? I think I mentioned that earlier. And the more these carriers are able to step in and start actually providing comprehensive terms and conditions for the directors and officers market, that's just going to continue to drive innovation in the space. You'll see broadening terms and conditions. Theoretically, that should also continue to creep down that pricing and retention market as more carriers enter the space and are able to provide coverage there.
Yeah, well said. And Zach, to build on federal legalization, I mean, it's bound to happen, right? I mean, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, 8 years, we don't have a crystal ball, but the more Washington kind of brings up the conversation and talks about it, the better for everyone, right? Because everything is very convoluted. There's state regulatory licenses, there's no interstate commerce. The federal government can't really see over the FDA and the quality control from a national level. So there's a lot of issues, but we do remain optimistic. The Safe Banking Act has come up a few times. Stuff like the MORE Act and the Claim Act also continue to kind of be passed through the House, but we'll see. Canada has been legal for 3 to 4 years now, and still has federal legalization in Canada since 2018. Still, it is a very specialty niche market. So even when there will be some sort of federal legalization program, whatever you want to call it, there still will be an exponential kind of learning curve to be had as far as the lack of experience, the lack of data. So it's still going to be very much in flux for the foreseeable future, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, certainly a road ahead, but it seems inevitable, but hopefully we get there soon. Another question from the audience here, and a good one. How do you know if you are over or underinsured? And how can you really strike that right balance? What is the right balance?
Well, I'll let Kyle kind of answer that, but really, one of the slides we kind of went through today is, understanding your risk tolerance level and constantly reviewing your program, right? We constantly see programs that we have the opportunity and privilege to review for our friends and clients where there's redundant policies or there's double overlaps in coverage or where there's gaps in coverage as well. So as this emerging industry continues to flourish and your business grows at that exponential speed, it's important to constantly kind of review it. And that's what partnering with the experts actually does. But Kyle, I'll let you comment on that.
Yeah, Jay, I think you hit on a lot of great points there. And probably the biggest is, unlike any other industry, is as you mentioned, just review your policies every single year, right? It is an ever evolving industry, not only on the cannabis side, but also on the insurance side. So things are changing year over year where you might get broader terms and conditions and better coverage. So ultimately, I think that's the first step. And then it's really just reviewing your own risk tolerance, right? How much of it do you want to transfer to an insurance product? How much do you want to retain? We can do higher retention options, et cetera, to kind of diversify that portfolio and how you want to address that risk.
Yeah, all good information there. More questions from the audience here. And given what you guys mentioned earlier, Jay, you stressed so much the importance of partnering with the experts. So therefore, which insurance companies are the most cannabis friendly?
Well, overall, it depends on what line of business there is, but some of the ones that I did mention, are the specialty niche carriers, and we have tremendous relationships with all of them. So there's not that many of them out there. So it is important to not just get the solution that's available, but actually presenting a narrative and building that, underwriting story for the insurance company to kind of really review, right? As Kyle mentioned, it takes not only the partnership with the client and the broker, but also the insurance carrier to really make sure that you have a good solution that's protected. And, you know, to name drop some of them again, there's SafeHerb, there's CanGen, there's QuadScore, there's CanAssure, just to name some of the larger ones. And there's a lot of other kind of ancillary companies that are dabbling in the cannabis space as well. And we're going to continue to kind of advocate for the space as well, and bring in new entrants and bring in new and more capacity into the cannabis market.
Yeah, the more the merrier, right? I think we would take anyone interested in this industry, more carriers, the better. Another question for you, along the same lines there, what resources can you recommend on this topic, whether it be books, websites, blogs, podcasts? What resources might you recommend to anyone in the audience?
Zach, I might jump in on this one. I want to put a plug in for the Cannabis Business Times. It's actually an excellent publication, and it covers a lot of the challenges and a lot of the emerging topics that are prevalent in the industry, and it's always something new and something interesting in your publication. So thanks, Zach. And also want to kind of plug our cannabis safety management system. We talked about developing a safety process, and we've developed a cannabis safety management system, our services team here at Hub, to help cannabis companies to establish a safety process within their organization.
Yeah, and I think Wynn's feeling kind of generous today. So if you wanted a kind of a copy of that safety management system, you know, reach out to us and we'll be happy to kind of provide you a copy of that.
Yeah, that leads right to my last question for you, Jay. How can attendees in the audience best get a hold of you or anyone else from the Hub team if they want to follow up after this webinar?
Well, again, you know, we have our hubinternational.com/cannabis page. Obviously, our corporate marketing team does a great job all over social media, but direct emails can go to cannabis@hubinternational.com. And one of our superb experts, like you've heard from today, will be able to kind of assist you in any query you may have.
Well, folks, you heard it right there. That is today's webinar, Making the Connection Between Risk Management and Profitability, a guide for cannabis operators. On behalf of Cannabis Business Times, we'd like to thank Hub International and the panel of experts today that helped us. Jay, Wynn, Kyle, Tim, thank you all so much for your time today. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise, and we hope we get to do this again with you soon.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks.